I have been working as a prime delivery driver for over 3 years now. Most of the day is pretty routine. I drove one of Prime's vans, delivering packages to homes and apartment complexes in various neighborhoods in the city. To be honest, I enjoyed the work more than I expected. The route is usually easy, the neighborhood is familiar, and after a while you start to recognize certain houses that order packages almost every day. This story happened about 6 months after the work. There's one neighborhood on my route that I always go to. It looked like the sort of place you'd see in an ad. Quiet streets, clean sidewalks, nice front lawns, and identical-looking houses lined both sides of the street. That day, I worked my way down the street like normal, stopping every few houses to drop off packages. At least 10 houses on the block are awaiting delivery. Finally, I pulled over in front of one of the houses I immediately recognized. I delivered there a few times before. I picked up the package, got out of the van, and started walking into the driveway. That's when I saw a man standing inside an open garage. There was a car parked next to him, and he was just watching me. Nor in the usual way. He doesn't smile or wave like most people. He just stood there quietly, looking at me as I walked towards the house. Initially, I considered handing over the package in person. But before I got close enough, he suddenly looked away and walked deeper into the garage, partially disappearing from view. It all feels awkward. So instead, I walked to the front porch, put the package next to the door, took a photo of the delivery, and got back in my van. As I reached the driver's side door, I looked back once more. The man looked at me again from inside the garage. Something about it bothered me, but I tried not to think too much about it. I continued the rest of my route and finally returned to the Prime warehouse that afternoon. After parking the van and finishing inside, I headed to my own car in the employee parking lot. That's when things got weird. As I got into my car, I saw another vehicle parked a few spots across the parking lot. The headlights were off, and under normal circumstances, I probably wouldn't have noticed them at all. But there's someone sitting inside, watching me. I remember squinting through the darkness for a moment before realizing that it was the same guy from the garage, the exact same person. At first, I really thought I must be wrong. But the longer I look, the more convinced I am. I just sat there frozen in my chair, trying to understand why he was there. How does he know where I work? The man did not move. He just sat quietly in his car. I couldn't see his face clearly because of the darkness, but I could feel him looking at me. After maybe 2 or 3 minutes, the headlights suddenly lit up. Then he slowly left. I remember feeling really unsettled on the way home that night. Still, I tried to convince myself that it was a strange coincidence. Maybe it wasn't even him. Maybe I thought about it too much. For the next few days, I didn't have a delivery for the house. Then, about 3 days later, another package for that address showed up on my route. When I saw the address, my stomach tightened a little. When I arrived, the garage door was closed this time. There was no sign of the man. I took the package and walked carefully to the front porch. That's when I saw a handwritten note taped to the front door. It reads, "Please bring the package into the house." I stopped and looked at him for a few seconds. Something about the request immediately felt wrong. Typically, we leave packages outside the door unless instructed otherwise in the app. And even so, entering someone's home is definitely not normal. But at that moment, I began to rationalize it. Maybe they've stolen packages before. Maybe they're old. Maybe if I ignore the instructions and the package is lost, I will somehow be blamed for it. So contrary to my better judgment, I open the door a little. It's not locked. The interior looks quite normal at first. Only the standard entrance leads deeper into the house. But then I saw another note stuck to the wall further inside. This one's just saying, "Send packages this way," with an arrow pointing deeper into the house. It immediately gave me goosebumps. I do not know why, but every instinct in my body suddenly began to scream that something was wrong. The house was completely silent. No TV, no sound, nothing. I immediately placed the package right inside the doorway, turned around, and walked out as quickly as possible without running right away. As soon as I got back in my van, I locked the door. I remember checking the mirror repeatedly as I left, half expecting to see someone standing outside watching me. After that day, I never received another delivery for the house. But about a week later, while driving through the same neighborhood for another delivery, I noticed 2 police cars parked outside that exact address. I do not know what happened there. Maybe it has nothing to do. Probably not. A few weeks later, my delivery route changed completely, and I never returned to the neighborhood again. To this day, I still think of that house sometimes. And to be honest, I still believe that if I followed that second note deeper into the house, something bad would happen to me. This happened about 2 months ago when I was in college. At the time, I was living in this old, run-down 2-bedroom house with my roommate, Louis Anderson. The place is honestly not good. The neighborhood had a pretty bad reputation, and the house itself looked like it had just survived the last 10 years. But the rent was cheap, which we really cared about at the time. Both Louis and I work part-time while balancing classes, so our schedules are everywhere. Although we lived together, there were days when we rarely saw each other at all. One night, Louis was at work, and I was home alone. It was about 10 p.m., and I was sitting in the living room watching TV. The living room window faces the front yard, so I can easily look outside without getting up. At some point during the performance, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. I glanced toward the window and saw a man walking into our front yard. At that moment, something about her was missing. He didn't bring anything. He doesn't look at the phone or check the address the way delivery drivers usually do. He just walked straight towards the front door like he already knew where he was going. I sat there for a moment watching her, trying to figure out if maybe she was in the wrong house. Then he grabbed the doorknob and tried to open it. It immediately sends adrenaline through my body. Our front entrance has 2 doors, a thin screen door on the outside and a heavy main front door behind it. Fortunately, both are locked because we always lock them in the neighborhood. I immediately got off the couch and walked towards the entrance. After failing to open the door, the man knocked. Hard. I stopped behind the main door for a moment, debating whether I should answer. Finally, I just opened the outer screen door while closing and locking the main door between us. The man standing there looked to be in his 30s. She has a bigger body, brown hair, jeans, and a plain t-shirt. There's no uniform, no badge. No one identified him as a delivery worker of any kind. Before he could say anything, I asked him frankly, "What do you want?" Without hesitation, the man replied, "I'm with Prime. I have a package delivery." Immediately, I looked down at his hand. Nothing. There is no box. There's no envelope. There's not even a scanner. I asked him. Okay, where's the package? The man pointed vaguely toward the road and claimed that it was still in his truck. Then he said, company policy required me to sign it first before he could bring it home. It all sounds ridiculous. I know I haven't ordered anything from Prime yet. So I told him exactly that. I didn't order anything. The man paused for a moment, then asked if anyone else lived there. The question immediately made me more suspicious. I remember saying something like, "What's wrong with you?" He ignored my tone completely and insisted he still had a delivery for the house. Then his attitude suddenly became more aggressive. He told me that I needed to open the door so I could sign the package because it was big and expensive, and he supposedly needed help getting it out of the truck. At that moment, every instinct in my body told me that this person was full of it. Nothing about his situation makes sense. There is no uniform, no package, no Prime trucks in sight. And now he wants me to unlock the door and go out with him at night? Not at all. I told him to get lost. Then I slammed the door shut in his face. For a few seconds, everything went silent. Then I heard him start cursing loudly outside the house. Nor is it a normal frustration, a really angry scream. I stayed by the window watching closely as he walked back across the yard and disappeared down the street. As soon as he left, I called Louis. I asked him if he had ordered anything from Prime recently. He immediately said no. That pretty much confirms it for me. Whoever that person was, he definitely wasn't there to deliver a package. And honestly, I'm still thinking about what might happen if I opened that door or followed him outside to his truck. Fortunately, after that night, I never saw that person again for the rest of the time we stayed there. But since then, any time someone suddenly knocks at night, I always check twice before opening the door. Something very unsettling happened to me last week. And although technically nothing dangerous has ever happened, the whole situation still scares me every time I think about it. I live in a fairly normal apartment building. It's honestly a decent place overall, not a fancy apartment or anything. But it's not sketchy either. Most of the people who lived there seemed friendly, and I never had any serious problems during the almost a year I was there. Near the entrance on the first floor, there is a shared mailroom where everyone's packages are delivered. And since I constantly order from Prime, I'm always there to pick it up. One week, my coffee maker suddenly stopped working. I drink coffee every morning before work, so it's only natural that I immediately order a new one on Prime with delivery the next day. The next afternoon, while I was still working, I got a notification that the package had been delivered. So after coming home that night, I went down to the mailroom to pick it up. But when I got there, my package was nowhere. At first, I thought maybe I was ignoring it. The mailroom was full of boxes as usual, so I carefully checked each package one by one. Nothing. I checked the tracking again. Delivered. I remember standing there confused, trying to figure out what was going on. Maybe someone accidentally picked up the wrong package or something like that. Finally, I gave up and went back upstairs to my apartment. I was already looking through Prime support on my phone, trying to figure out how to report a lost package, when suddenly there was a knock on my door. It immediately caught me off guard because it was already night. I walked over and looked through the peephole. There's no one there. For a moment, I just stood there staring at the empty hallway before opening the door out of curiosity. Sitting on the floor just outside my apartment is my coffee maker. I took the box slowly, completely confused. Then I noticed the tape was already opened. The box had obviously been opened before it was left there. The coffee maker is still inside untouched, but everything tastes very strange. I took him inside and spent the next few minutes trying to come up with a logical explanation. The only thing I can think of is that another resident accidentally picked up my package downstairs, opened it thinking it was theirs, then realized the mistake and calmly returned it. It sounds strange, but it's the only reasonable explanation. So finally, I let go. I did not contact Prime. I didn't report it. And after a few days, I completely forgot about everything. Then about a week later, it happened again. This time, I ordered some skincare products online. When I got home from work, I checked the tracking notification, saw that the package had been delivered, and headed to the mailroom. As soon as I entered and could not find my package, my stomach immediately dropped. I searched every box in the room. Nothing. And that's when I remembered the coffee maker incident. I remember standing there thinking, there's no way this is happening again. I went back upstairs feeling really unsettled this time. Hours passed. Then late that night, another knock hit the door of my apartment. This time I reacted immediately. I rushed closer and opened the door almost instantly. The hallway was empty again, but unlike last time, no packages are on the outside. Instead, there were only folded notes on the floor. I took it and opened it. The note simply reads, "To get your package, come to 112. I felt my whole body tighten. Apartment 112 is on my floor. I didn't know everyone in the building, so I honestly didn't know who lived there. But at that moment, one thing became very clear. Someone stole my package on purpose, and now they want me to come to their apartment alone to get them back. There's no way I'm doing that. Instead of going to Unit 112, I immediately called the apartment management office and explained everything. Fortunately, they took it seriously. The next day, management reviewed security footage from the mailroom and hallway. And they found it. It turned out to be a guy I'd seen around the building a few times before, but never actually talked to. The footage showed him picking up both of my packages from the mailroom and bringing them back to his apartment. Then, later, it showed him placing the coffee maker outside my door after opening it. The management immediately dealt with it. Apparently, he could not explain his behavior at all. Not long after, he was kicked out of the building. To this day, I still don't understand why he did it. If he wants to steal the package, why return it? And why leave a note trying to make me come to his apartment? That's the part that bothers me the most. Because honestly, I don't think he wants the package at all. I used to work at Prime for a while, mostly inside one of the warehouses. My job changed depending on the shift. Sometimes I packed orders, sometimes I handled inventory, and other times I worked receiving shipments. It wasn't the greatest job in the world, but overall, it was decent enough. Most of the people there were cool, and I never really had problems with anyone. At least, not until this happened. There was one coworker named Joni. I didn't know him very well. We'd occasionally pass each other during shifts, maybe exchange a quick greeting. But that was about it. He always seemed quiet and normal enough, so I never thought much about him. One night, after finishing a late shift, I clocked out and headed home. The drive back to my apartment usually took around 15 minutes. The roads were pretty empty that night, and nothing unusual happened during the drive. Everything felt completely normal. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex parking lot, I noticed another car entering from the opposite side. I barely paid attention to it. The complex was huge, with dozens of tenants coming and going at all hours, so seeing another car wasn't unusual. The vehicle parked far away on the other end of the lot while I grabbed my things and headed inside. My apartment building honestly wasn't great. It was old, run down, and poorly maintained. Half the security doors barely worked, and people constantly propped them open with random objects. I walked through the hallway and headed upstairs toward my floor. As I reached the top of the staircase and started walking toward my apartment, I heard the stairwell door open somewhere behind me. Again, I thought nothing of it. I couldn't even see who it was. I unlocked my apartment door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me like I always did. Not even 10 seconds later, someone tried opening my door. The handle jerked violently. It startled me so badly that I froze for a second. I was still standing near the entrance, so I slowly stepped forward and looked through the peephole. My stomach immediately dropped. Standing outside my apartment door was Joni, my coworker from Prime. For a second, my brain genuinely couldn't process what I was seeing. I had never told him where I lived. I had never invited him over. I barely even talked to the guy at work. I stood there silently staring through the peephole while he remained outside my door. Part of me almost opened it out of confusion, wanting to ask what he was doing there. But something about the situation felt horribly wrong. Then, after a few seconds, Joni turned and started walking away down the hallway. Once he got farther away, I finally cracked the door open slightly and looked out. The second he heard the door move, he stopped and turned around. I called out his name and started asking him what he was doing there. The moment he saw me, he ran. Not walked, not hurried. Ran. He sprinted down the hallway toward the stairs without saying a single word. Within seconds, he disappeared out of sight. I just stood there completely stunned. The next day at work, I immediately asked around to see if Joni was there. He wasn't. I ended up telling my supervisor everything that happened, including how he somehow showed up outside my apartment door late at night after work. My supervisor said he'd speak to him, but Joni never came back. As far as I know, he quit immediately after that night because nobody at the warehouse ever saw him again. I only stayed at that job for another few months before leaving myself. I also moved out of that apartment not long afterward. Looking back now, the creepiest part is realizing that Joni must have followed me home from work without me noticing. I still don't know how I missed it. And considering how broken the security was at that apartment complex, getting inside the building probably wasn't difficult at all. Honestly, I'm just grateful I locked my apartment door immediately after walking in. Because if I hadn't, I don't even want to think about what could have happened next. This happened last summer. And to this day, it still bothers me when I think about how close something bad might be. I live in a house with my wife and our 2 daughters. My oldest daughter was then 19 and coming home from college for the summer, while my youngest was 18 and still in high school. Between the 4 of us, packages always appeared in our house. It felt like there was a prime box on our front porch every day. So seeing delivery drivers around the neighborhood is completely normal for us. However, one night, something happened that completely changed the way I looked at late-night delivery. It was about the middle of summer, and it happened that I woke up later than usual. My wife had already climbed onto the bed, and my 2 daughters were in their room for the night. I was getting ready to go upstairs myself, but before doing so, I decided to load the dishwasher and leave it on overnight. After finishing in the kitchen, I walked past the living room near the front of the house. That's when I heard the sound of the car door closing outside. The neighborhood was quiet enough at that hour that the noise immediately caught my attention. Out of instinct, I glanced through the front window. A man walks towards the view. He came from somewhere near the road and headed into our driveway. I couldn't see the vehicle he was coming from because of my point of view, but I immediately realized that he was wearing a blue Prime vest and was carrying a package. At first, I didn't think much about it. I thought maybe my wife or one of my daughters had ordered something. The only thing that feels weird is the timing. It was about 10:30 p.m. I know Prime drivers are sometimes late, but this feels really late even to them. Still, it seemed likely enough that I didn't panic right away. I was actually going to head upstairs when, for some reason, I stopped and looked out the window again. The lights inside the living room were off, so the man probably couldn't see me watching him from inside the house. She walked to the front porch, but then he just stood there. Initially, I assumed he was putting his package down or maybe checking the address, but the seconds passed, then more seconds, and he still hasn't left. He also never knocked on the door or rang the bell. After maybe 15 seconds, I started to feel uncomfortable. I went to the window so I could see better. That's when I realized something was wrong. The man was still holding the pack. He didn't deliver anything. Instead, he seemed to be looking around the property, almost like he was checking to see if anyone was awake. Then suddenly, he came down from the porch and walked towards the side of the house. At that moment, every alarm bell in my head rang. I immediately moved throughout the house, trying not to look at it. I checked through the side window first, but couldn't see it anymore. Then I heard footsteps outside. They're moving toward the backyard. I immediately walked past the dining room at the back of the house, and when I got there, I caught a glimpse of the man passing by one of the rear windows. Just a second. Then he appeared near the back door. When I saw him, I rushed over and turned on the backyard light. As soon as the light came on, the man immediately turned around and started running. He still has a Prime package in his hand. He ran back around the side of the house and disappeared towards the street. I followed his movements through the window, trying to see where he was going, but a large tree near the edge of the road blocked most of my view. I never paid much attention to the vehicle. I only heard the car door slam shut, followed by the engine starting a few seconds later. Then the car drove away. It was then that I fully realized what was possible. I don't think the guy works for Prime at all. I think the vest and the package are just part of the disguise. If anyone notices him walking around the house late at night, he will only look like a delivery guy who is doing his job. And honestly, that's the part that bothers me the most. Because if I didn't stay up that night, if the lights inside are off, if no one notices it outside, I had no idea what he was planning in our backyard. The next morning, I told my wife and daughter everything that happened. None of them ordered packages that were supposed to arrive overnight. And since then, whenever I see a late-night delivery driver, I always double-check before assuming they're actually there.